I was always sort of curious about Cronin. I thought he was some sort of wizard. I thought he was older than he was. I thought a lot of things, and then he comes, he's like, he's just this guy. But he does the full spectrum. He lives down the street. So here's Cronin.
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you're listening to the Q&A with A.P.C., the show that features conversations with artists, cultural figures, policymakers, performers, and other innovators living in Virginia. Episode 43, Kisha Moore. Nearly 500 years ago, way back in the 1500s, a cookie was born in Italy. It wasn't until two Benedictine nuns, seeking asylum during the French Revolution in 1792, supported themselves by baking and selling the little treats made of ground almonds, egg whites, and sugar. The nuns became known as the Macaron sisters. Their secret recipe was passed down over the next several hundred years, and the rest, as we say, is history. My guest, Kisha Moore, is the owner of Hummingbird Macarons, a boutique bakery and dessert caterer located in Norfolk, Virginia. Hummingbird Macarons opened in 2014 and was an immediate hit. Growing up, Kisha's mother ran a bakery out of her kitchen, and Kisha was her informal apprentice, watching, listening, and practicing her mother's techniques and recipes. Beginning in 1998, Kisha attended the culinary institution Johnson & Wales and later earned a certification in food and beverage management and hospitality supervision from Norfolk State University. In this episode of the Q&A with A.P.C., we talk about how she creates new flavors from her experiences and memories. She offers some tips on cooking and baking with children. She tells the story of the building collapse that almost ruined her business. We play rapid fire, and we discuss everything about baking the most difficult and the most sought-after cookie in the world. For more information on Kisha Moore and Hummingbird Macarons, visit hummingbirdmacarons.com. Kisha Moore, thanks so much for coming on the show. Here's a great quote from a profile on you in Distinction magazine. Two perfectly round meringue cookies, joined in the middle by a light cream filling, somehow contain all the flavor of a slice of cake without any of the regret. One bite and you'll be hooked. How would you describe a macaron to someone who is unfamiliar with them? Like, what are they?
So I would describe it as there's this thin, crunchy shell, and there's like this cake-like substance to the cookie because it's made out of almond flour. So the almond flour gives it like the weight to it. So different than if it was just a simple meringue cookie that would be with egg whites and sugar. The almond flour added to that creates this kind of a more dense texture. And they described it well. It's just heaven.
So it's like a sandwich style cookie.
Yes.
They've been around since the 1600s. Mm-hmm. What makes them so special and so unique? There's a real mystique around them, it seems.
There is. I think it's because there are endless things that you can do with them. They're so versatile. They're sweet. They can be savory. I mean, the sky's the limit on flavor. Like whatever you can think, it can go in it. I saw there was a shop in New York that made hot Cheetos ones, and so it's just that kind of cookie. And I think also because it's not something that everyone's going to go out tomorrow and be like, oh, I'm going to go make some macarons like they would. I'm going to go make some cookies.
Right.
There's a bit of skill involved in making those.
Kisha, are they the most difficult cookies to make in the world? I've sort of come across that phrase a little bit.
Yeah, they're supposedly the most difficult cookies and the most sought after cookies in the world. Anyone that even is able to master it, there's so many variables that you have to deal with because meringues are weather sensitive. So the science behind it is what makes it difficult. And if you don't really understand the who's, what, why's, when's, or for's, there's a difficulty in that. It's like in our shop, we have 2 dehumidifiers, and they fill up. Like that's how much water is especially in our area, that exists. So even after I've been doing this all this time, I have some that just, they don't make the cut.
You said you were raised in a creative family and that you were encouraged to explore your passions. In what form was their creativity shared with you? Like how and what were you introduced to growing up?
Yeah, so my dad and my mom are both like lay artists. So my mom decorated cakes when I was younger, and just really had an affinity for that, and was where we lived. People ordered cakes, and it was very popular. And I saw that as another way to express myself creatively. My brother was incredibly gifted with the ability to be able to draw art created out of things that didn't exist. And so seeing my mom do that with buttercream, I was like, this is amazing. So I piped my first rose at 9 and thought I was about to win the world's award for the youngest person ever.
So did your mom own a bakery, or was she just was like full on in the kitchen? Like what?
No, she didn't own a bakery. She had a home-based business. So
Okay.
that's what, I saw her in there. And so her crack cakes would be my demo cakes.
Right, and I came across these are the rejection cakes that
Her
the
reject cakes would be how I practice.
So she would bake a cake, and there would be some imperfection, whether it's a major or a minor imperfection.
Yeah.
And
Like a superficial,
right.
Hairline. I'm like, that's characteristic. It's not a big deal. So it was just interesting.
So, and you began baking as a child. So what were the go-to baking items as a child? Were they the traditional sort of chocolate chip cookies, or was like the bar raised already for you at a young age?
Yeah, the bar was raised at a young age. My mom loved and still loves to bake. So it was anything. I mean, I liked cookies. Pies are actually my all-time favorite dessert for me. I like the best of like the crust and the cream or whatever is inside of it. I just like the textural complexity of that. But yeah, it was, cakes, pound cakes. But I challenged myself. My parents had dinner parties a lot, and so I'd be like, oh, I'm going to make this chocolate raspberry cheesecake that I've never made before, but it looks amazing, and I'm going to do it. So whatever the challenge was, I was up for, enjoyed it.
Were the recipes written down, or were they just observation, or were they verbal? Like how were the recipes shared?
Sure, some were written down. If I spent time with my grandmother, those may not have been written down. That was more observation. With my mom, they would be written down, or sometimes she'd be like, I think some of this went. So, I got the best of a lot of those. And that experience helped me, I think, be able to navigate through like eyeballing things and really understanding how things work together. Back then, when we would make like popcorn balls, she wouldn't use a thermometer. She was real old school. She did the water test, you know? So
right.
I learned how to do like those stages based on water, not because of a thermometer. So that helps. Like if the thermometer breaks in the shop, I'm like, just drop it in some water. If it does the hardballing, we're still good to go.
I read that you and your brother would burn sugar when your mom wasn't home.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
So we wanted candy.
Okay.
In our house, we didn't have Twinkies and cupcakes. My mom was like, if you want a snack and you want it sweet, you're going to make it.
You're going to make it.
So we'd be like, this is what mom did. She would put the sugar in the pot, and that's what happened. Well, we accidentally almost burnt the house down, but we observed that's what she did, and that's what we thought we were doing.
And burnt sugar would produce like some sort of like hard candy kind of?
Sure, like a hard caramel candy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent yourself, do you have any tips on baking with children? I've got 2 kids. In terms of setup or expectations or safety or an ideal meal, because there's a lot of listeners who have kids. Any advice that you can... Because we want to work in the kitchen with them, but it's tough to make the jump sometimes.
It is. I think the best way to do that is to get them involved in the process of measuring and really stay with them, because it needs to be fun for them, and of course you want it to come out semi-good. And so usually with our children, I would just be like, okay, we're going to measure it, and they would measure and scoop it in. And then if I knew, it's probably different from my experience, like, okay, they were a little heavy-handed. I would go back and kind of like,
I see.
scoop it off. But I wanted them to have fun and enjoy what that baking process was. So the best thing is for them is like to pre-measure everything in like their separate bowls. And I find that kids have so much fun adding in. So for example, if it was cookie dough, then you would cream the sugar and the butter, and then the eggs would be measured and all these things, and the kids would get to add it in, and they feel in that capacity they've actually really created and made something together. And so I would say don't get stressed out by potential mess. Make it fun. And have fun with that, because that's what it should be. You're not in a commercial kitchen, you're at home. And
right.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. What was your first job? Like high school job?
So funny. So my first, besides like being a babysitter, which maybe is like the most typical, but my first like legit job was working at Little Caesars. And And so I was primarily the cashier, but when it got busy, they threw me back on the line. And one night they threw me on the line, and I forgot to cut like 10 pizzas. and people were calling like,
People calling back.
They were calling back, our pizza's not cut. And I was like, well, yeah, because the girl who should be in the front got thrown in the back.
So growing up in school, one of the things I read about you is that you demonstrated that you had like a particularly good head for numbers.
Yes, I had a good head for like adding money, but any other math was obsolete.
And you were an accountant for a while, for like 5 years.
I worked in the accounting department for U.S. Airways. I started off in customer service, transferred to the accounting department.
What did you learn about yourself in those 5 years as an accountant?
I learned that numbers tell the story, and that data is very important. And that was important for me because I'm a risk taker. So I'm kind of like, yeah, we're going to jump off the cliff, and whatever happens on the way down is what happens. And so that side of it helped me understand how important getting facts in place. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make all of your decisions, but it actually lends to what those decisions may be.
You enrolled at Johnson & Wales, which is a culinary institution, in 1998. What was school like? What did it give you that you didn't have before?
For me, I enjoyed the technical aspects of what school involved and the discipline of working in a commercial kitchen in an environment with people, and that everything isn't going to be perfect. You learn how to make perfect. Make things work, and so that helped me understand the level of stress, the discipline, the team, how to get things done, how to be organized, how to execute, how to read recipes, how to understand ingredients when you didn't have recipes, how things work together. And those things, it just helped me get to something faster than I did before.
After college, you were a pastry chef for several catering companies, and I've got a question about catering. Mm-hmm. What is the secret to baking in bulk like that and producing so many of one or two particular things? Like, it's more than just tripling the ingredients, I'm sure. But like, how do you approach baking and creating in bulk like that?
Sure. So it really is just a matter of measuring. So when you get to that level, you're doing things on a metric level. So we measure in grams. If I got a recipe that's 1 times a recipe, well, when I can add those numbers up in grams, it's really fast.
Okay.
So that bulk that's what that is. It's just increasing the recipe by the numbers and ratios. And there's a conversion, there's even a math that does a conversion rate for you. That's what happens. And so you're able to roll out all of these things.
So you measure it all, mm-hmm. but how do you ensure that they all taste the same and are approximate replicas of each other? Like, how tricky is that uniformity of mm-hmm. taste, if that's a phrase?
It is tricky, which is why we have recipes and QA. We taste. Tasting is like, oh my gosh.
What's QA?
Quality assurance.
Oh. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Or quality control, which is QC. So, but the recipes have been tested. Those weights are exact. They work no matter where you are. And the consistency, so like with our cookies, they're weighed. Everything in a commercial kitchen needs to be about weight because it's the only way that you're going to actually get an exact product. So cookies are weighed to be like 94 grams. So I know that all those cookies are 94 grams. And then, they're shaped a certain way. There's a certain way we press them, go into the oven. So that's a good question because everything about a recipe in that setting, from the time that you execute the recipe, make it, and then bake it, there are points that you check along the way to make sure that product is consistent.
In 2002, you and your mother started a business together, a bakery in Virginia Beach, Virginia, called Cornerstone Gourmet Bakery. Mm-hmm. The bakery you opened with your mother closed after 1 year in business, and you enrolled at Norfolk State University and earned a certification in food and beverage management and hospitality supervision. Mm-hmm. It seems often to me that people will learn more about the work, whatever kind of work it may be, mm-hmm. by actually doing the work than they do by learning about the work in a classroom. Yeah. What did you feel you needed or were missing when you went back to college?
That's a good question. There were things that I learned. There, in that capacity as a food and beverage manager, there are things that you need to know, like there are laws. I just feel like sometimes that information comes quicker than you doing the research. And back then, it wasn't like the internet was quite what it is now. And so that was important to me to go back and earn that certification because of the work involved. And I felt that it was important to have a knowledge base. I'd like to be able to go into situations where I know things about my industry. Sometimes people open up things or get into things and they're just like, I'm going to do it. And they miss how to do those things well. And that was important to me.
Talk about the turnaround that happened at Calvary Revival Church and how your path found you.
So I was a food and beverage manager for the private school side.
And that was after the bakery with your mom closed.
Yes.
So there was like a downtime there, right? And there was maybe some question where you were questioning whether or not like this is like something like this is what I should be doing.
Yeah. I didn't used to think that failure was good because it's extremely painful to walk through processes that you didn't think were going to end, or you had this like great idea and there's no way that it can come to an end. And so when my mom needed to leave to take care of some things back in Missouri where her parents had lived and they had a house. And when that happened, I'm in my like mid-20s, so I'm thinking, yeah, I can still do this, I think, somehow. And then I realized that I was inexperienced in other ways to be able to navigate being a wife, having 2 young children, run this business, and do whatever else that was necessary in life. And so that was a failure for me. I couldn't keep going. And I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm not doing food anymore or anything related to it, in that way. And then when the opportunity opened up for me to go to the private school, it reignited that thing that's in you. You can't run away from the passion that's inside of you. You can press it down, but it definitely, it was nice to have that transition for sure, to give me some time to think about the next steps.
Another restaurant, a bistro, and a patisserie opened in 2009. It specialized in gourmet salads and sandwiches and desserts. Can you give me a few tips for making a good sandwich? Like you should spread the mustard with a knife instead of just squirting it on, or like the lettuce and tomatoes should go above or below the meat. I know that's a stupid question, but I love sandwiches. And,
do you?
Yeah,
I don't know if there's any like one great way to make a sandwich. We did a lot of panini, and I think cheese is important, but you don't have to have cheese. So I think it's just starting off with great ingredients.
Okay. So I have bread.
You have bread.
And I'll toast the bread. And then should I do cheese, meat, lettuce, tomato? Should it be bread, lettuce, tomato? Like, what I mean?
It definitely
does
should
it
be
matter?
cheese. It does, because
Okay.
So, this is a good question because I'm a stickler for this. You don't ever want the tomato to touch the bread.
Right.
So that always needs to have a border, a barrier between the bread and whatever else. So if it's no cheese, then it needs to be lettuce or some other thing that's going to protect it.
Okay.
But definitely like bread, spread, cheese, lettuce, tomato, meat. Right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then, and then if you're like me, more cheese, sauce, and then the bread.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Good.
for sure. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Kisha Moore, we're going to play some rapid fire. I'm just going to ask you some questions, and the first thing that comes into your mind, you can say it. Kisha Moore, are you ready to play rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Electric or gas stove? Which do you prefer?
Gas.
What time do you go to bed?
9.
What time do you wake up?
Between 4 and 6.
Do you wake up with an alarm?
I have one set, but not always.
What did you have for dinner last night?
I had leftover pizza.
The beach or the mountains?
Oh, man, the beach.
What's your dream car?
Pagani.
Describe what's on your perfect pizza.
Mushrooms, pepperoni, pepperoncinis, olives, sausage.
What's your favorite candy bar?
Score.
What's that?
I don't even know if they make them anymore, but it was like that chocolate with toffee. It's like a Heath bar, but it was a Score bar.
Okay. Cutting sandwiches in triangles or halves? What's the right way?
Triangles.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
What's a talent that you don't have but wish that you had?
Playing the piano.
Breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Your favorite of the three?
Breakfast.
The greatest movie of all time is blank.
The Princess Bride.
What was the last movie you saw in the movie theater?
The Incredibles 2.
Morning, noon, or night?
Morning.
How do you feel about the heels of bread?
I love them.
What's your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
What was your favorite cereal when you were a kid?
Frosted Flakes.
Sports, boring, okay, or great?
Great.
What state were you born in?
California.
Who was the last person you hugged?
My daughter.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Kisha, you're doing great. We're going to play a little word association. So I'm going to say a word or a company, and you try to say whatever comes into your head.
Okay.
Okay. Disney,
Princess.
iPhone,
Apps.
cupcakes,
Buttercream.
Instagram,
Love it.
Virginia,
Yay.
Google,
Can't live without Google. Am I supposed to use one word?
whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
Brunch,
Yes. All day.
bike lanes,
Yes.
walking,
You should walk.
ice cream,
My all-time favorite dessert.
hoagie,
Roll.
the gym,
Gotta go. I love it.
sneakers,
Multiple kinds.
Donald Trump,
Silence. That's why I didn't say anything. No.
YouTube,
The best thing ever created.
craft beer,
I am getting an appreciation for that.
Netflix,
Can't live without it.
National Public Radio,
Good information.
Barack Obama,
Classy.
homework,
Reminds me of my dad.
Game of Thrones,
I have not seen one episode.
Star Wars,
Love it.
screen time,
It should be reduced.
the Statue of Liberty,
Beautiful place to visit.
podcast.
Podcasts are excellent.
Thank you so much for playing Rapid Fire. You did great. What was the original vision or idea of Hummingbird Macarons?
I wanted to be able to provide this great experience eating macarons, this cookie that I enjoy making. It's a labor of love, and share that with people in the community. So
What was the first thing you felt you had to do before the first person walked through the door on the first day you opened your store?
that we needed to have as many macarons displayed as possible because we opened up on Valentine's Day.
And did that prove to be the right call?
It was the right call because that day we were actually supposed to open a week before, so it was balls to the walls that day.
You've said that running a business is a, quote, discipline of your mind, body, heart, and soul. What does it take from each part?
Whatever isn't taken from anything else you're doing, it takes the rest. Okay, so if you have kids, it takes the rest. If you, that's what it does. It takes everything that is in you. It is, you've got to be able to, not that it becomes you, but there's so many responsibilities in owning a business, and especially if you want one to be around for some time, and you've got to cultivate that, and so it's a daily thing. You don't necessarily get a complete break from that. I mean, I take time off, but even in the time off, you're still thinking about some aspect of your company.
Let's talk about food for a bit. You've said to come up with flavors, you draw on your experiences and memories, your grandfather's avocado trees for your avocado citrus with honey macaron. Has there ever been an experience that you've tried to capture in a flavor and haven't been able to capture?
Yeah, so there's one that I'm working on, and like the group of people who like this kind of comment. I like French fries and ice cream, or potato chips and ice cream. So each collection, I'm like, I want to do the potato chip and ice cream or the French fry ice cream flavor. And the shells, because they're almond, and it would be vanilla with the chip. So when we make our macarons, our buttercream flavor has to stand up against the shell. So the flavor may taste good on its own, but if you can't eat the macaron together and still get the flavor, then it doesn't work. So that one has been one that I'm like, we're always going back and forth with, because I want it to be exceptional and really get that. I haven't given up on it yet, but the chip still needs to stay crunchy, inside the buttercream. So that would be one that As simple as it sounds, that's been, yeah.
You've said that macarons have simple ingredients, but they come out like magic, and then there's a finesse to it. Talk about the simple, the magic, the finesse.
So I think in general with baking, I like the fact that you have these parts that in and of themselves make no sense that they would come together and bake. And so that's what macarons are. They start with egg whites, sugar, water for the sugar water mixture, almond flour, and that's it. And so you mix this and you get this shell with, and you're like, that's so amazing. Like this came out of like these egg whites, sugar, almond flour, powdered sugar mixture. And I love everything about what that is, that it's simple ingredients by themselves.
There's these separate entities,
Uh-huh.
and they come together
Yeah.
and create pies, cakes,
Yeah.
macarons. On June 8th, 2015, a building collapse partially destroyed your bakery and several other neighboring businesses. What happened on that day?
Wow. So on that day, yes, the roof awning for the building completely collapsed from one end to the other. We'd been open at that point 3 months. It was a new space in a different location, a new city. And I thought to myself, this is the last thing that any business owner ever wants to happen. And I had friends who have been in businesses for a long time. They're like, girl, this is the worst day of your life. What are you going to do? Some people are like, if that happened to me, it would be over. And I thought to myself, it's interesting the different perceptions that people have about what over looks like. I just knew we needed to do whatever it took to stay in business because we had only been open 3 months. And I was like, this cannot be happening. And so there's something that happens, and I don't know if this goes back to the discipline of like being in a situation that can be chaotic in a kitchen, but when that happened, instead of me being anxious, there was a sense of calm. I separated myself from what was happening so I could assess what needed to be done. And thankfully, many people reached out to us so we could open up because we had orders due. I mean, it was a lot that you processed at one time. We have orders due, we're closed, the fire people tell us we need to get all the stuff out in like 45 minutes, and this is all the things that we need to do. So I learned a lot about myself in that moment.
What do you remember about that day?
I remember that I was on my way in and that I had been delayed, and probably if I had gotten there on time, I'd have been crushed by the roof awning because at the time that it fell, I would have actually been going inside the shop.
And no one was, thankfully, in your business or any of the neighboring business, there was no
one sitting outside. As a matter of fact, there was a couple that had just walked into cure from sitting outside. And so we happened to be closed that day, but it's a prep day for us. And so we had one employee that was inside the building when it happened.
What happens when something like that happens?
You learn how fast you can manage a crisis. Yeah, and what you need to do to pull things together. I think that the whole fight or flight thing kicks in, definitely. Every emotion and every bit of adrenaline was fully available to me in that moment.
I've read, and you said that you were escorted into your shop by a firefighter who told you had 30 or 45 minutes to get out whatever you wanted to keep. That has to be a completely frantic, bizarre, out-of-body experience. What were those minutes like?
Everything you just said. It was frantic, bizarre, and it was complete out of body. And I was there thinking, gosh, what do we need in the next 30 to 45 minutes to go set up someplace else? And thankfully, within that amount of time, even that day, we had to take all of those things and get them to our freezer. We had a freezer at our house and get everything that was perishable into that place, and then we transported it. It was a complete on-the-ground contingency plan that was off the cuff and not at all expected, obviously.
So there's a common refrain or saying about how if someone loves candy and they may decide to work in a candy store, but by the second week they've been around candy for like 8 hours a day, their clothes smell like candy, their hair smells like candy, they get to take leftover candy home at the end of each shift, and now they cannot stand to even be around candy.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you hate macarons?
No. But I also don't eat them like that. Like, I agree with that philosophy. So when people come in and they're like, if I worked here, I'd be big as a house. I'd eat everything in sight forever. And I think to myself, yeah, you wouldn't. For me, when I'm at work and we're creating macarons, that is work. So when I'm tasting them, I don't have the same sense of enjoyment as I do if I go to a party and someone's ordered the macarons. When I sit down and I'm in that space and I eat something that we've created or a dessert, I'm like, wow, this is really good. Like, that's when I really get to experience full on what that is, what that's like. And so that's how I compare that when you work in a place, all of the enjoyment that you have in eating candy when you're watching TV is different when you're at work, because you're working to make sure, like we said before, that it's correct, it tastes right, that's following the recipe, it's what it needs to be. On the day that we have to taste and test all the flavors, I leave there thinking, I need food, and I don't want to see another macaron for at least another week.
Kisha Moore, thanks so much for coming on the show. It means a lot to me.
You're welcome. This is fun.
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you've been listening to the Q&A with A.P.C. To hear archived episodes, visit QAAPC.com. For exclusive content, including upcoming shows, behind-the-scenes pictures, and more, follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at QAAPC. The executive producer of the Q&A with A.P.C. is Ben Riley. The music was arranged by Soup.